What's up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel. Today we're here to do another episode of Get Ready With Me, which is my little makeup and book club here on this channel. Today we are discussing the book Cold Falling White by G.S. Pendergast. This is the second book in the Nox Invasion series. The first book was Zero Repeat Forever. We already did a video on that. If you are not caught up on that and you want to be, I will leave a link in the description down below, and I'll also put a link up here on the screen if you want to catch up on the first installation of this series first. Essentially, the way these videos tend to work is a bunch of us have decided to read a book together, and I'll discuss it now while I do my makeup, but I also do it in enough detail that if you haven't read along and you just kind of want to hear a weird story about strange alien creatures and weird things that I don't want to do too much spoiling of while you watch me do my makeup, then you can do that too. With that being said, even if you're not reading along, if you haven't seen the first video, I suggest you watch that first, otherwise you're gonna have no idea what's going on. I'll list everything that I'm using on my face today on the screen as I use it, so that if you want to follow along with the tutorial part of it a little bit, you can do that as well. I won't be explaining what I'm doing with the makeup. Like, I even put the shade that I'm using usually and what palette it's from, so if you wanted to, you could probably recreate it anyway. For the most part, I'm going to be using the NORVINA Volume 3 palette, but I also dipped into the MUERTE palette a little bit today, so those are like the two mainstays of this eye look. Please don't forget to leave a like on this video if you enjoy this series, because it's very helpful to me, especially with this series, and I would really appreciate it. Subscribe if you're new. That's all we got to talk about before we get into it. We have a lot to get to either way, so let's just get into it. Cold Falling White by G.S. Pendergast and this face of makeup. So when we left off in the last book, we had seen Raven in a cave. She was passing away from an arrow wound, and in order to save her, August had taken one of his darts and darted her in the neck. Previously, we had been led to believe was killing people, but actually the darts seemed to be preserving their bodies for another purpose. And where we pick up in this book is August has promised to get Xander to the human territory, and he's carrying Raven's body over his shoulder. One thing that's a little bit different about this book is that we start to get POV chapters from Xander, which is interesting because Xander was one of my favorite secondary characters in the first book. He just kind of seemed like the most chill and like the least annoying, because some of them were so annoying. Liam, thank God that guy's dead. Ooh, that sounds horrible, but he's a character in a book, so I don't feel that bad, you know? So we see from Raven's perspective, although she seems to be semi-conscious at best, what it seems like is happening is that the serum in the dart is changing her so that she is becoming more similar to a Nox. But she also says that she feels as if she's being rebuilt, which is very interesting. So we get our first Xander chapter, and he says that August left Raven's body dressed in a green silk like slip dress and a pair of jeans in a hotel room somewhere in Canada. As promised, August is helping him hike to find his way to the human realm. They're going to try to get past the web of attack drones that separates the Nox territory from the human territory. As they travel together, Xander realizes more and more that August seems to have very human emotions. He notices that August keeps taking dandelions that are growing in the fields that they're hiking through and like weaving them into his armor. He obviously doesn't know the significance that he called Raven dandelion, but he notices because he thinks that's like a strangely sentimental thing for him to do regardless. When they get close to the border where there is the web of attack drones, it's like an electrified net of attack drones that like, it just, there's no way you're getting through it for the most part. They find an oil pipeline that Xander remembers talking about, which is really impressive because I would never remember something like this ever, even if I was still like only a couple years fresh out of school. That he and his sister did a school project on. It was an oil pipeline in Canada, and he remembered the location of it and thought that if he could slip into the pipeline, then maybe there was a chance that he could go through that pipeline under the web of drones and get into the human territory. He thinks that it might be a bit of a long shot because it's like a 5-mile underground journey in this like fume-filled pipe of oil and sludge. When they get to the other end, they're about to leave through an access panel that August has been like taking the bolts off for him. They are confronted by more Nox. But in order to make sure that Xander gets through safely, August takes one of his Nox grenades and blows up the inside of the tunnel with the other Nox in it, and presumably kills himself in the process. Raven is still knocked out from the dart poison, but she wakes up for a moment and she feels like she can see through her skin, like just shadows and kind of like almost like peripheral vision. But the next thing that she hears is digging, and she realizes that somebody is digging a hole, and she assumes that she's going to be buried alive. Before she can even think further on that fact, she's sucked back into the blank void of her mind, and her body continues to rebuild itself. Xander, once he crosses through the pipeline, finds himself in a refugee camp in the human territory. It's not a very nice place, but it's better than being alone. And although there is a strict policy against fighting at the camp, Xander and his martial arts background often finds himself in competitive fights in order to try to win snacks and stuff from other kids, and other things too, like gloves and just general supplies that they may need. One night in particular, he's fighting for some snack rations and he gets caught by a few troopers. Apparently there is some semblance of order going on where they have like sort of like a makeshift police force. When he gets caught by these troopers, he takes off running through the city, and as he's running, he swears that he sees a lone Nox. And they think he's lying just to try to get out of trouble and like distract from the fact that they're gonna arrest him and bring him in to be sentenced for fighting. Once they bring him in, they bring him to an officer. Her name is Officer Chaudhry. I think that's how you say her name. Xander has been there for 5 months, and it's not the first time that he's gotten in trouble while he's there, and Captain Chaudhry seems to be pretty sick of his shit. When he came through the pipeline and they asked how he got there, he told them the truth about August, but none of them seemed to actually believe that it happened that way. She charges him to 20 hours of snow cleaning for fighting, and while he's there, he uses their computer to check a database. Apparently, they have established a database where you can go on and look to see if any of your family, your friends have been reported as either dead or alive or where they might be. And every time he has an opportunity, he goes and checks for all the people that he can think of. And while he's in there, he finds Raven's listing and lists that he was with her when she died and that she is in fact dead, and leaves a note for her family that if they want to ever talk to him about her passing away and what happened and hear her story, that he's willing to tell them. Raven wakes up for real this time, and she has been handcuffed to Tucker. They're laying in like these snowy sand dunes. It's like sand dunes with snow on top of them, which is strange. And she thinks that maybe she's on another planet. She doesn't even know where she is. And everyone else there, including Tucker, if they're awake and alive at all, seem kind of like a zombie. They don't have an awareness of who they are or what's going on whatsoever, but she does. The Nox ship docked, or like hovering, I guess, however a Nox ship docks over the dunes, and all of the kind of zombie-like darted and reanimated humans that are laying around her are just kind of getting up and going onto this ship without asking any questions. And she's like, oh no, not me. I'm not fucking falling for that trick. So she takes Tucker and she runs. And as they run from this ship, first of all, there's no shot in hell that they're gonna make it away from the Nox. They kind of know that, I think. But she realizes as she's running that she's crazy strong now. She's insanely fast. She's pretty much indestructible, and whatever they did to her with the dart poison has essentially made her a superhuman. At this point in the story, I'm like, where is August? Where is he? What happening? What do now? Where Augie go? Quite frankly, he's my favorite, and if he's not here anymore, I'm tapping out of this series. But instead we get Xander, and Xander is at the library now at the refugee camp, and he gets called to the camp gates because there are troopers and some other mysterious person whose name is Gavin. Gavin wants to take Xander to another place that's not a refugee camp where he'll have better accommodations. They hop on a motorcycle in freezing cold ass Canada in the middle of the winter and drive back to this, I guess it's also a camp, but it's not exactly a camp. When they arrive, they give him a cup of hot tea and a plate of scrambled eggs to give him a little bit of sustenance, welcome him to their home, and they have a little bit of a discussion about what he can expect while he's there. And Garvin, I think it's Garvin, is it Gavin or Garvin? I think it's Garvin. Garvin basically tells him, here you'll have a warm bed, you'll have heat, you'll have hot running water, you'll have food, and you'll also have a purpose. And Xander is like, what is the purpose? Because that sounds really ominous and vague. He soon finds out that this is where they make the famous Nox kill videos. They spend their time looking around for rogue Nox who are on the human territory side, and then they make videos of themselves killing them. When Raven and Tucker ran from the Nox that were trying to get them onto the ship, they wound up falling into a frozen lake, and she lost consciousness after that. When she comes to, she is in a clinical setting and she's sitting next to Tucker. They're in this room with a very interesting creature, I guess you could call it. It looks like a human, but it's like a human meat puppet. And this human meat puppet is a first Nox, so it's like first top rank Nox. Its head is surrounded by all of these little lights that look like fireflies that seem to be directing the puppet. They call her and Tucker a word in Russian. I believe it is pronounced Snezjinka. Tucker is full on like a zombie. He kind of doesn't know what's going on at all. He seems to not really have any memory of what happened after they got attacked at the camp. The creepy human meat puppet hybrid thing says that Raven was incompletely processed, and it looks like they're about to lunge to do something to her, to either kill her or completely process her. Assuming this means that she shouldn't be aware and conscious the way she is, she should be more like Tucker. The meat puppet basically tells her that they're completely indestructible now at this point, and he doesn't understand why she's not pumped about it. They take them and they dump them back outside in the dunes with the other previously darted humans. Xander wakes in the middle of the night to his roommate Dylan having a nightmare, so they stay up and talk for a little bit. They wind up leaving in the middle of the night anyway because there is a report of a Nox at the airstrip. They head toward the airstrip and they encounter a Nox in some sort of a grinding shed. I don't even know what a grinding shed is, but it doesn't sound like I want to hang out in one, that's for sure. When they encounter this Nox, it's first of all by itself, which is not typical. And it doesn't seem to want to engage with them. It wants to run, and it does. It doesn't try to shoot them. It doesn't try to dart them. It just wants to get away. And Xander thinks it's suspicious because he knows that that's not how Nox operate typically, except for August. And he kind of starts to wonder if maybe this Nox is August. Raven is out in these dunes. Tucker is a zombie. She's grievously injured at this point because the way that they put her and Tucker back into the dunes was not exactly gentle. They basically just jumped them out of the transport. She's got broken bones and broken parts all over her, and she can feel her body repairing itself piece by piece as if it knows where the broken parts are supposed to be and is like dragging them back into place. And she says she's in excruciating pain and she basically can't do anything. Until it comes to a point where Raven is throwing up like a black sludge that she thinks is probably her blood because that's what the Nox blood looks like. She managed to take one of the little firefly creatures with her when she left the ship. He's basically just a little blue ball of light, and so she calls him Blue. A Nox soldier, a 10th, comes over and checks on her. She tells him that she thinks she's dying, and he just laughs and says, "No, you're not." and that the throwing up is just her body getting rid of whatever sickness is in her. This Nox seems to be willing to talk to her and like kind of helpful and cool, so she follows him as he leaves. She asks him if he's seen August, and he says that there are no 8ths there. He also explains that what she is something that they call a snowflake, and it's not a delicate human, but she's also not a Nox like him. It's something different. As the sun goes down, she sees the moon, and she's excited to realize that she's definitely still on Earth. And 10 says, well, where else would we be? And she said, on your planet. And he says, this is my planet. While they walk, they encounter a human girl in the woods. The human girl is not excited at all to see Raven. And that's when Raven realizes that she is definitely something different and separate from humans now, and she might not ever be welcome again among humankind. The girl shoots a rifle at her, and Raven catches the bullet from the rifle in her hand and starts to really realize the power that she has. The human girl gives her information that the ship that she's trying to get to is about 100 miles away, parked in the middle of a lake, and it is about 5 miles wide and just generally pretty enormous. And Raven promises that she'll bring them back fuel and supplies if she can. The girl doesn't seem to believe her, but Raven means it. I almost forgot a really important part. So while Xander was out looking for this Nox that was running away, roommate Dylan wound up getting darted in the hand, and they had to amputate his hand to stop the toxin from spreading so that he didn't turn into a zombie, or in their eyes die, because they have no idea that these people are still alive. While they travel out to go transmit this video, which they say may be their best video yet because it's just chock full of action with that kid getting his hand chopped off and all, Garvin kind of lets on that he's suspicious of how Xander made his way through the pipeline and into the human territory. He wants to know the truth because he wants to know if Xander would be able to communicate with them, because as it turns out, Garvin has captured a female Nox and wants to interrogate and torture her. But he also doesn't really want to take part in harming one of the Nox, because in his time with August, he began to realize that they're more human than everybody else would like to admit. He does make an attempt to go into the cave and communicate with her, but she is not very receptive at all. They have her chained up to a wall in the cave. She manages to kick over an oil lamp and sets Xander's pants on fire, and they decide that they'll come back and try again another day. But one little interesting note is that Xander lies and says that he was the one who did it to make sure that she doesn't get punished for what happened. Meanwhile, Raven finds this giant ship in the middle of the lake. It is enormous. It is also filled with zombie snowflakes. She blends into the crowd of them pretty easily and happens upon what appears to be like an instructional assembly that they're having. There are a few that she runs into who attempt to speak to her, but it's as if they can only say the same thing over and over. There's an announcement over a loudspeaker, and they want everybody to sit down, and there's a young man who refuses to sit. When he refuses, one of the Nox soldiers comes over and punches him in the face so hard that it basically just turns his face into a pile of bloody mush, and that's when Raven realizes that she really better pretend that she's just going along with everything. After the announcement ends, she winds up finding Mandy in the crowd. Now, we haven't seen Mandy since the very beginning of this tale because she was darted all the way back at the camp, but she also seems to be completely aware of the way Raven is, and they speak about like how their minds are kind of working like computers now. They can see stuff that they weren't able to see before, like ultraviolet rays and radiation and things like that. But the most significant thing that they both have been noticing is that they have these dreams or like visions sometimes in their mind of a fissure in the sky, and it's not like it's too vivid to just be a dream, and they feel like it's some sort of a sign to them or like something they need to know about, and it also feels like it's pulling them, like it's drawing them to something. Back at Garvin's little Lord of the Flies camp, Xander wakes up the next morning to find out that somebody has ratted out on Garvin that he has a Nox captured. Xander is really worried that they're gonna think it's him, but he knows that he didn't do it. And apparently Garvin knows that too, because he immediately pinpoints that it was this young boy named Michael. And Michael is really essentially just a child. He's about 14 years old. The punishment for treason, which is what Garvin calls it, is that they get banished out into the snow. After a big theatrical show where he like makes everybody take a vote and says that he's not a dictator, even though he totally acts like a dictator, he sends poor little Michael out into the snow to try to walk back to the town that he came from, knowing damn well that the kid's gonna die. But once all of the other boys are gone, him and Garvin get into a truck and they go out to drive Michael back to the town, because although the expulsion is definitely something real, Garvin doesn't actually want to kill the kid. He just wants to make sure that he keeps order. They get back to the town. Xander wants to go visit Dylan in the hospital, so he goes to see him, and oh my god, the hospital is a mess. Dylan is like wrapped up in bandages and just bleeding through them. He's got infections. He's barely conscious. He's not doing well at all. And once Xander finishes his bleak visit with Dylan, he decides to go and check one of the computers to see if anything's changed on that database. And when he goes to look, he realizes that he has a response from Raven's family. Not only are they alive, but they have made it to the coast like Raven had hoped the entire time. They're offering to let Xander come and live with them because they appreciate so much what he did for Raven. When they go to leave the town, Garvin has somehow managed to trade the truck that they came in for a helicopter, and when they get back, there's a huge celebration with booze and everything because they're so excited to be able to kill more Nox by using their new helicopter. Back at this enormous ship thing, Raven sends Blue with instructions to try to find 10th, Tucker, and August if he's there. Although I think at this point it's pretty clear that August is not there. She wants to get inside of the ship into like different areas. And she knows that 10th can help them get in there, but she has to make it look like he's doing it for a reason. She fakes a fight with Mandy so that 10th can pick them up and bring them inside for a reason, and that's exactly what they do. They find themselves in this strange cold storage area where there are fully broken, fully dead, half broken, half dead Nox just strewn about. Raven is pretty terrified that she's gonna find August in there and that he's gonna be dead, but they don't. And once Blue gets them through these doors by like flying into it and doing his little lightning bug alien space magic, they find themselves in a different type of cold storage area where there are snowflakes like her and Mandy who are bisected in half, and they're being like grown back together in pieces to like make more of them. So they're like cutting them in half and then using that half like plant clippings. And in this awful human science lab, they find Tucker. Before they can get him out of there, they encounter a first. And this meat puppet that they encounter is obviously new because he's the same boy that got his face punched in during the assembly for not sitting down when he was told to. The first isn't aware that Blue brought Tucker back to consciousness, so Tucker is just laying there in wait, and before the first can do anything to stop them, Tucker jumps up and kills it, and they make their escape out into a transport with 10th, and 10th flies them off in this transport to get them out of there. Xander realizes that he just doesn't belong at this camp with Garvin and these boys. He's just not cut out for it. It's not for him. So he wants to make an escape in general. He's brought in again to question the Nox girl. And when he gets there, he tries to build a rapport with her because he figures if he can get her to trust him a little bit, maybe she'll tell him a little bit more than she's been willing to tell anybody else. So he spends quite a bit of time playing the harmonica for her. The boys that he is with, especially this one boy named Mobs, who seems like kind of a huge asshole. They don't like that he's doing it this way. They get very impatient. They tell him that he's just trying to get in the Nox girl's pants, which is so stupid. But Mobs, the impatient prick that he is, decides to go into the cave and take matters into his own hands. And while he's in there, the Nox girl manages to break out of her chains and she kills him. Long story short, Xander and her escape together. They go off out into the wilderness, and now he's traveling with the Nox again. So when Raven and Tenth and Mandy and Blue escape from this Nox ship on this transport, their plan is to go back to the base where Raven had stayed with Liam and what was the woman's name? I can't remember. The lady who was in charge. They decide to go back there and see if anybody is still surviving there. On the way there, Raven realizes that what she wanted the whole time was to have Tucker back, but now that she has him back, especially since Blue woke him up, because when Blue woke him up, he became more aware and he was more like the old Tucker, and she has him back now the way she wanted, but she also doesn't think she wants it anymore. Like, the thought of it kind of makes her sick, and she feels like she's betraying August. She also has the realization the last thing that she said to August was Tucker, and that he definitely thinks that she was still in love with him, and that's why he cuffed them together and left. Xander is traveling with this female Nox, and she helps him escape back to the Nox territory under the web again. This time she finds a frozen lake, breaks the ice and helps him swim underneath. He goes completely unconscious from the cold, and when he wakes up, he's at a fire with a human girl, and he's completely freaked out until he realizes that it's not a human girl at all. It's actually the Nox that he's been traveling with out of her armor. She doesn't like being around Xander out of her armor. She says that he keeps staring and she feels very vulnerable. And then she just is sitting by the fire and begins to sob uncontrollably. He heats her up a few cups of hot water over the fire to help her warm up and help her calm down. And eventually she starts to get a little bit more comfortable with him and tells him that her name is Aurora. Raven and company have managed to make it to the base. When they get there, there's no guards on duty, and they immediately are suspicious that something terrible had happened. But there are also not any bodies to be found, which either means that everybody escaped before they were invaded by Nox, or that they were all darted and that the Nox already came back and collected their bodies. The one body they do encounter, though, was the body of Emily, because August had killed Emily before he left with Raven. And when Tucker sees this, he thinks that Raven killed her on purpose and almost outright admits that he had been having an affair with Emily, and that's why Raven wanted to kill her, but doesn't quite come out and say it just yet. They also find the body of a lesser character. He wasn't darted. It seemed like he had his neck snapped, and he seemed to have been trying to retrieve and escape with maps from the control room. And as they go to leave, they discover that there's a note from Topher on one of the exit doors. So they know at least that Topher has made it out. 10th, in the meantime, is not doing well. He's wheezing a lot. The elevation is way too low for him, and he is in a bad way. But he refuses to stop helping them and stop protecting them, and just carries on and says that he'll be fine. Xander and Aurora hike in the wilderness together for days on end, until eventually they start to find signs of human beings. When they get to the campsite, the shelter that's been built there is this very specific type of teepee that one of the more survival-oriented counselors at their camp had taught them to make, and Topher had gotten extremely good at making them. It's revealed to us at this point that while they were still at the camp, Topher and Xander had been having an affair. Someone starts shooting at him from the woods. Aurora is right there ready to kill this person, but Xander tells her to stop because he's pretty sure at this point that it is Topher. Once the person approaches and stops shooting and pulls off his scarf, he realizes that it is Topher, but he looks terrible. Before either of them have any sort of a chance to really even explain how they got there or what they're doing there, they are attacked by a group of Nox, and Aurora, to save them, throws them about 50 feet over a waterfall and breaks their fall with her own body. And when they get to the bottom of this waterfall, they're surrounded by several more Nox that come dropping out of the sky. Topher and Xander think they're screwed. But as it turns out, These are the rogue Nox that had made a small appearance in the first book, and Aurora is one of them. They bring Xander and Topher back to their camp area. They give them hot water. They let them take a bath in a hot spring that's nearby. They give them food, and they generally try to help them out and make sure that they're gonna survive, because both of them are in really bad shape. Topher is like completely covered in frostbite and looks like he's starving. Like the whole thing is a mess. It seems like there is a completely different culture of Noxness with these rogue Nox. Like Aurora has a girlfriend, they have like relationships and friendships, and they're all like half in their armor, half not. They're definitely not following the rules that the rest of the Nox are following. They also bring them into a Nox transport, and they show them all of these screens, and on these screens they see one of like the human transmissions that come through daily while the signals are jammed, and they realize that the whole time the reason that the signals have been getting jammed at this like 12 noon hour for the last well over a year at this point is because these rogue Nox are jamming the signal to let humans communicate to try to help them. Raven and her group are headed back to Calgary from the base because they figure they might as well look there. Maybe that's where Tucker went. And everything is pretty much destroyed. There's not much of anything left there at all. Raven decides to go back and check the apartment building that she had stayed in with August. Now she tells everybody that she wants to go to check if there are like food and supplies there because they had left a lot of stuff there. But she really has a sneaking suspicion that August went back there to wait for her. When she gets there, she finds August, and he's in her old bedroom. He's in the dark, he's completely shut down, and she realizes that she's pretty sure that he's actually dead. While they were in Calgary, before they discovered August, Tucker had somehow figured out that August was the Nox who darted him, and now he's extra pissed. Blue comes in and takes a look at August, and then he zips off and disappears. Raven has said her goodbyes. She's accepted that August is dead, and they're about to leave to go back to the dunes and figure out what it is that they're meant to do with whatever these like fissures they keep seeing in the sky in their dreams are. But before they leave, more Nox come in the door. And they think that it's some sort of an attack, that they're gonna get in trouble. But in reality, Blue had gone and found some of the rogue Nox to tell them that August was there, because August was not dead. August just was completely devoid of power because he let himself sit without food or water or sunlight for a really long time, and he just needs sun to recharge. So there's like a whole scuffle because they don't exactly understand what's going on, and most of them don't read their signs. At the end of it all, they wind up getting on a transport because August is alive, and they're going to take them back to this rogue camp where they're going to help him out, get him back on his feet again, and help the rest of them out as well. This is when we get our first August point of view chapter for the book, which halfway through the damn book, or more than halfway through the damn book, I gotta be honest with you, that's too far into the book to get an August chapter in my opinion, but you know what? I'm gonna let it slide. August is in a confused, half awake, half asleep state, very similar to what Raven was dealing with when she was being put back together. He's not sure what is real and what is a memory. Part of him thinks that he's still with Sixth. He's out of his armor. They give him some food to eat, and eventually one of the more, it seems like she's higher ranking among the rogues, but it doesn't necessarily mean that she was higher ranking among the Nox. Her name is Sky, and she tells him to put back his armor and start to recharge himself. Sky helps to explain to August what's going on, and she tells him to rest for a while and that he can rest easy because he's among friends. Sky also confirms for Raven that the snowflakes are indeed being made for some sort of a battle, which is what Raven has been suspecting. I would also like to interject for a moment here to say that in my mind, as I'm reading this book, Tucker and Topher are the Dolan twins, and you can't tell me that they're not. Raven and her whole crew take some time to think about what's going on, and they can really remember things really vividly now that they've only seen once. Like, they have a full-on photographic memory type of a thing going on, and when they think back to the maps they've seen, they realize that the spots that were marked off, they thought were like some sort of a base for the Nox, were actually all places where there were nuclear detonations on Earth. But what they do know for the time being is that they want to help the people who are in the human territories, because these people can't get supplies because they're cut off from these like drone webs and they're essentially starving to death. They make a plan to go to the power source of the nearest web, which they have figured out is a big dam. Most of the rogue Nox choose not to fight, but there were a good number of them that agree to go to this dam and help them do this. One of them being August, who is in the room now and seeing Raven for the first time since he woke up. And Tucker is intentionally like kind of grabbing on Raven and being a dick and like a little bit pushy. And at one point he even goes and pulls Raven's hair, and August just attacks him and they have like a big fight and it's a whole mess, and Raven is really annoyed with both of them. So Raven, her group, and the group of rogue Nox who agreed to help them go to infiltrate this dam. Until this point, August has pretty much ignored Raven since there was that incident with Tucker the night before. But before they part ways to go into the dam to disable it, August turns to her and signs, "Be careful, Dandelion," and she realizes in that moment that he still cares and that she still cares, and it changes everything for her, and she's all swoony about it, and she goes off with a completely different perspective than when she left. They get attacked by Nox while they're in there, and one of the rogue Nox that's with him, whose name is Ash, who was one of the ones who was like the more helpful, gets washed away in the river and he's lost and they think he's dead. Once the deed is done, they leave in 2 separate Nox transport ships, and almost immediately after leaving, one of the transports is taken down by a human jet. The transport with Raven, Mandy, Eighth, all of the important people manages to escape by like going underwater, and it's a whole mess and they almost don't make it out of that. And when they get back up into the sky, they're attacked again by another group of humans, but this time they're in a helicopter, which Xander realizes is most likely Garvin's helicopter, because how many human helicopters are really flying around out there at this point? The helicopter is about to take their transport down because of the whole underwater thing. They were having a hard time getting away. The engines weren't at full capacity, and they're about to get a missile shot at them and them taken down when Tucker takes a Nox grenade and launches himself out the back of the transport and blows himself up with the helicopter to save everyone. Raven is obviously freaking out that Tucker killed himself to save everyone. Over, of course, because this is his brother who he literally just got back after thinking he was dead for over a year, is like screaming and wailing and just not dealing with it well at all. When they land, they find Blue and they find Ash. Apparently Ash had managed to survive, so that's good. At least they came away from that with one win, besides the whole taking down the damn thing. They did succeed, but they lost a lot of people in the process. She runs into Xander at the camp, and Xander tells her, "You should go find Eighth, because when you parted with him after you got shot with the arrow, the moment that you two had together, I had never seen anything like it before, and you two need to talk about it," and basically tells her, get your ass over there and like make up with the boy, you know? Raven finds Eighth's footprints walking off into the woods, and she takes off after him to go and find him to have a chat. Eventually she catches up with him, and there's definitely some like awkward romantic tension feelings, but it's not like an unfriendly tension this time. This time it's like an I don't know what's gonna happen thing, and he picks her up and carries her back to this little cabin he's been staying at in the rogues camp. From August's perspective, when they get back to the camp, he wants to take his armor off, I guess to make things a little bit more intimate with them, like so they can talk and he can seem more human. He tells Raven that he's so sorry for so many things, and he starts to apologize for specific incidences. And Raven says, listen, we've both got a lot of things to apologize for, and none of them matter now. And she says, why don't you just lay down with me? And as soon as he lays down, he falls asleep like pretty much immediately and just falls into like a very, very deep sleep. Xander and Topher are back at one of the other cabins, and Aurora comes and gets them in the middle of the night and says that her and Nova need to take them so that they can leave now because it's going to be a very long journey. They are going to try to get back to the coast so that they can go live with Raven's parents. When Xander found Raven, he also told her that her parents were still alive and that he was going to go live with them. And she's super excited to hear that her family was alive, but she's also a little bit upset and jealous because she knows that she could never go back and have that normal life the way that she is now. But she's happy to hear that they're alive, and she's happy at least that Xander is going to get to go and live with them and be happy, and they can be happy together because she does love them all. So back at the cabin, August is still sleeping, and as he's sleeping, she realizes that he's like even more human looking. He's got a little color in his face. They continue to have like sweet little moments together, and she asks him, August, do you love me? And he says yes, and she says that she loves him too. And they wind up sleeping together, and she's very hesitant about it because she obviously doesn't think that August has ever done anything like that before, which he admits that he hasn't. Is forbidden among the Nox, even though Raven says that the rogue Nox have been doing it quite a bit from what she's seen. What they share is like super intense and super deep and more than just any old sex that she's had with anybody before. And she says that they are connected as something even more than soulmates. Afterward, they talk even more. August tells her that he can remember little pieces of like a childhood before his mind was taken from him. But she also is having this recurring vision, this recurring like lightning bolt in her head feeling about this fissure, and it's calling her back to the dunes. Like she knows that she has to go now. Look at this red spot on my neck that I got just from like scratching myself with my nail. Anybody else have like super sensitive neck skin like that? So she tells August that he can't come with her because of the low elevation, he'll die. She tells him everything that happened with Ten. He's being super adamant about coming with her, and she's pissed at him for being so willful about it after everything that they just shared. Sky tries to explain that when they put their armor back on, that they lose control of themselves a little bit because like of the stuff that goes back into their system, and that he's not acting like himself, and that he'll come back around. So Raven has already taken off in the transport, pissed off at him and really upset that she's leaving that way. She goes back and they land for a second and they talk, and they leave off on a better note than they would have, because it almost was like they ruined the whole lovely night that they had together. Before they get to the dunes, they stop off where Raven had found that young woman in the woods, and they bring her the supplies and the fuel that Raven said that she would bring them. I lined my lips real quick with ColourPop Lumiere off camera because I've learned over the course of filming these videos that I cannot line my lips and talk at the same time. So as soon as the rogue Nox transport drops them off at the big ship, they are swept inside pretty much immediately by a group of Nox soldiers because they're not happy with Raven for having left. They don't really seem to give a shit about Mandy, and they just take her off and throw her back in the dunes with everybody else pretty much immediately. With Raven, they want to take her inside and they want to talk and they want to question her. They bring her inside. She's greeted by one of the first rank human puppet things. There's a cloud of the firefly creature things, and they are making a map with their lights showing all the different places where the fissures are. The cloud of fireflies becomes a cloud around the boy's head, and they like fly into his eyes and stuff and bring him to life and essentially animate him so that she can speak to him. She tells them that she wants to know what's coming through the rift, and they basically start to break it down for her and say that they don't know. They explain that the firefly creatures are not aliens at all, that they've actually been on Earth for 65 million years. They accidentally wound up there when a comet hit the Earth and opened one of these fissures, that they came through from a different dimension, and they've been there ever since. I don't know how and where they've been hiding. They don't really explain that part, but they've been there the whole time. They essentially use the humans as their army because they're too small to defend themselves from whatever's coming through these fissures. And she tries to get them to explain why something's coming through these fissures now, and apparently human nuclear detonations have been opening up these fissures all over the world and allowing something from their world, where they came from, their dimension, to come through and attack them on Earth. Now, they don't know what it is, they don't know what's coming, but everything from the dimension that they were in, pretty much besides them, is evil and dark and nefarious, and whatever it is, it's not good. She also finds out that the way they made the original Nox, the way they made August, was they took the children who were at these Russian Siberian gulag camps and basically used them for a science experiment, and that the Nox were their first idea of making these human clones to make an army to protect them, but they were too flawed. And the Snezhika, or the snowflakes, which apparently is Russian for snowflake, they said. I don't know, it could be anything to me, but that's what they said in the book. What Raven is now is like the perfected version that they came up with to help them protect Earth against whatever's coming through these fissures. Blue also floats out of Raven's pocket at one point, and they say that Blue is one of their children. They, as a being, are that cloud. Each cloud is a different individual, and the babies are just the singular dots. So they say that Blue is just a baby, and when they say that, Blue starts to transform, and they say he's too young, you can't be doing this, but then he like explodes into his own cloud of stuff, and then his cloud attacks their cloud, and his cloud winds up taking over the meat puppet boy who's talking to them. And so now Raven has a chance to speak with Blue for the first time in words, instead of just, you know, motions and trying to sign things to each other. Blue is able to explain a lot more to her. But Blue basically reaffirms for Raven that whatever it is that's coming is really bad, and that she needs to be out on those dunes. The body that Blue is using dies off really quickly because human bodies get like deteriorated from being used that way. Blue manages to arrange a transport for her to bring her out to the dunes, and she heads back out there for the battle with whatever it is that's coming through these fissures. She doesn't know if it's going to happen right away, but as soon as she gets there, she finds Mandy while she's there, and she realizes that most of the people on these dunes are just like robots that don't know what to do. So her and Mandy run around and try to tell as many people as they can to just trust their instincts, go with their gut, and like let their new perfected computer brain that was given to them by these firefly creatures lead them in fighting whatever comes through this fissure in the sky. A sense of resolve takes over Raven in these moments, and she's just basically ready to face whatever it is. And the last line of the book, Raven looks up to the sky, it cracks and screeches open, and the real war begins. We don't get to hear anything about what comes through it. We are left on an absolute cliffhanger. Do you know what came? I have literally no clue whatsoever what was coming through this crack. If you think you have any idea or like have seen any clues in the book, I read this twice already, and I don't think that I have any real idea of what the thing is that's coming through the fissure at them at all. But I definitely could have missed something, so if you think you know, please feel free to leave a comment down below and tell me. Also, let me know if you think that she'll make it back to see August again. What do you think is gonna happen in the next book in this series? Which, by the way, we're gonna have to wait 1 billion years because this just came out a couple months ago. I don't even know if the author is writing the next one yet. How long do I have to wait to find out what came through the hole in the sky? So that brings us to the end of today's video and the end of this book, the end of this makeup look, which I timed much better than I usually do. I didn't even run out of stuff to do this time. Please feel free to leave me a comment about any of your thoughts on this book so far. I would love to know your thoughts. I would love to know what your favorite characters are. Please don't forget to leave a like on this video if you enjoyed this book series, because it's very helpful for me to know that you guys want me to make more stuff like this going forward. If you're new around here and you like this kind of thing, go ahead and subscribe. Most of my videos are regular makeup videos, but I try to do these intermittently every few months to, I don't know, it's just like a nice community thing to do, and I think it's a little something different and refreshing on a makeup channel, and it's a good time. Those of you who watch it seem to really enjoy it, so if you do enjoy it, I encourage you to subscribe for more. Or if you want to just see me do makeup like this in a proper tutorial, I do that a lot. If you want to keep up with me between videos, at Miss Quinface over on Instagram, I'd love to have you there as well. I don't know that there's anything more that I need to say to you today. I have already said plenty. I feel like I've been talking for 72 years at this point. We've got our regularly scheduled makeup videos coming later this week, so I hope you're excited for that, and I will see you in the next one.